Hi,
Hi.
are we live? Yeah, I think we're live. Thanks, Wei Chun, for being my guest tonight for my second session of Unplug and Play. I'm still new to this, but it seems like it's doing well. How have you been, Wei Chun?
Not too bad. I work from home anyway, so
Oh, you've been doing that for quite a while now, right?
quite a while, over 10 years.
Over 10 years working at from home.
Yeah.
So how does that experience, 10 years working from home and one man show sort of work out for you? Like, how do you like that?
Uh, I guess the difference with the lockdown is, even though I work from home, obviously I go out a lot for meetings.
Yeah.
And even like, precisely because I work from home so much, even like for lunch or whatever, I always like to go out because otherwise you feel a bit trapped, right?
Yeah,
But now obviously I can't, so it's like hardcore,
yeah,
100% at home.
yeah. And
Yeah.
well, the good thing is you live in a very interesting part of Singapore, in Joo which I really love, right?
Another prostitute area, my specialty.
And beautiful Vietnamese food, right?
Beautiful Vietnamese food, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We have. I can see that we have an audience with us at the moment, and luckily today's session the audio seems great because I'm actually using headphones. So why don't we start by an introduction, Wei Chun, because I mean I've known you for a very very long time. You're one of the first people I met when I first came to Singapore, but there's likely that some audience don't know who you are. So maybe let's start with that. Give us a introduction. Who's Wei Chun?
Okay, I'm originally from Penang, so I'm Malaysian. I studied typography in New Zealand, of all places. And once I finished my degree, I came over to Singapore, I think in 1994. So basically, I've lived in Singapore, I think, for more than any other country, more than Malaysia, basically. Yeah. So I came to Singapore in 94. I started work in corporate design.
Yep.
And so it was in Chinatown, doing a lot of annual reports, branding stuff. And then I think about after 5 years of that, I went into publishing, which is a magazine design. Then after that, when our rival bought over our company, then I moved on, I quit, and then I just set up my own thing, which is CLANHOUSE. Yeah. So these days, basically, I do a lot of fashion work, I do a lot of lifestyle work. So even though I'm trained as a graphic designer, I actually art direct a lot of shoots and create like fashion imagery, celebrity imagery. But because I'm still a graphic designer, then I tend to be able to do everything basically. I can still design books, I can design entire magazines,
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. So there's a huge range of stuff that I'm doing.
Yeah. So how did the switch happen from like doing the corporate work to the fashion work?
Well, that was interesting because I enjoyed the corporate work. It's very like precise, meticulous. You're moving like typography bit by bit. But I think the final job that killed it for me was I was doing an annual report for SIA,
Yeah.
and that was one of the worst experiences I ever had.
Why was that?
It was so bad that I was like, okay, that's it for me. I'm leaving the corporate world. It was just so, like, for instance, as you know, in annual reports, you have a financial section that you need to design in the back.
Yeah.
So it's like a couple of like maybe 100 pages of just endless numbers.
Yeah.
So while I was doing the SIA annual report, basically what happened was SIA sent all their accountants to check the pages to our office.
Yeah.
I had never seen that before in my life. I've done hundreds of annual reports, right? They sent a team of, I think, 8 people to our office
Yeah.
to check the pages.
Yeah.
They all sat in a row,
Yeah.
and the lowest ranking person took my page first,
Yeah.
signed it off, he checked it and signed it off, sent it to the next person. So this went on for a series of 8 people.
Yeah.
And then when he reached the final guy, the most senior guy, he looked at it and goes like, I don't like this design.
Oh
I
my
was,
God. Yeah. That
I
always
was like,
happens,
what?
right?
you know, and then I was like, oh, but your Dr. Cheong, who was the CEO then, he
Yeah.
said, I approved it with Dr. Cheong.
Yeah.
And then the guy was like, well, if Dr. Cheong approved it, you get him to sign this. I'm not signing this.
Oh
You know,
my
so I was
God.
like, yeah, that was a bad moment. That
Yeah.
was when I decided I think I had enough of
Yeah.
corporate design. Yeah.
So what happened after that? You just quit. Oh,
Uh, the thing I realized about corporate design is while we do a lot of very slick work and all that, right?
yeah.
The kind of people that appreciate corporate design tend to be other designers
Yeah.
because nobody really gets to see annual reports. Like, I mean, if you show an annual report to your mom or to my dad, he wouldn't really understand what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So at that time in that studio, I was working for a London design company called DIA. They had just moved to Singapore and opened a Singapore branch.
Yeah.
So the SIN report was under DIA, and we coincidentally shared an office with Neo magazine, which is a top Chinese magazine.
Yeah.
And I got friendly with the editor.
Yeah.
And so and one of the designers told me, hey, the editor really likes your work. Maybe you should go talk to her.
Yeah.
So I talked to her, and she offered me a job. So I quit my corporate work and went over to design magazine publishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then how did the move from saying doing design, layout, typography, how did the move happen where you started like styling and, actually
Right.
doing the shoots and all that?
Uh,
Because to me, that's like a slightly different skill set, right? So how did that?
yeah, very different. And I can tell you because I had been in corporate for a few years, right? I think I was quite arrogant
Yeah.
in thinking that I would do magazine design like no problem.
Yeah.
And I realized that once I started doing magazine design, some of the ideas that I had about layouts and all that doesn't really work because as you know with corporate work, right, our work tends to be more reductive, like you're trying to trim everything down to the essentials so that everything looks good.
Yeah.
But with magazine work, you can't really do that. If you keep reducing everything down, right, you're going to end up producing a very dry looking magazine.
Yeah.
With magazine work, it tends to be additive. Like you tend to have to put in more stuff to make it interesting.
Yeah.
So that's the design part. There's the styling part, which that is an interesting story because at that time when I was doing the fashion magazines, we were relying on a lot of outside stylists, which are freelance stylists, to create fashion imagery for us.
Yeah.
And then because I come from a corporate background, we are quite sticklers about briefs.
Yeah.
So the problem with working with fashion stylists back in the 2000s was you would tell them you want a certain kind of fashion spread, like say about, I don't know, whatever. And then you will get pictures from them that are completely not what you asked for.
Yeah.
So after many, many rounds of that, it got extremely frustrating. And then that's when the editors and I felt that, okay, the art team should finally start directing our own shoots because we will have more control.
Yeah.
And we have a lot less temperamental people to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually how my career in styling and art direction actually started.
Okay. So basically you were working within a in-house team with the in-house photographer, or was it like
Mostly in-house photographer.
Yeah.
And literally thrown into the deep end because at that time, in those days, in terms of magazines, we were producing a lot of images. I mean, I was in charge of like 15, 20 magazines at a time.
Yeah.
So you can imagine the amount of imagery that we've had to produce.
Yeah.
And so you learn to shoot all kinds of things, like not just celebrities, but you have to learn how to make very ordinary people look interesting, glamorous,
Yeah.
beautiful. So it was a really interesting learning curve, and I definitely learned a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
And as you know, that's not something they teach you in design school.
Yeah.
Very few design schools teach you art direction, how to direct photos,
Yeah.
how to even shoot objects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe I think people might be curious as to what you do. So, perhaps we we could have a look at some of the work that you do. So
Okay.
maybe just share your screen and then let's have a look at some work.
I'll probably start with the magazine that I'm most known for back in Malaysia, which is a high-end Malay magazine called Glam.
Okay, sure.
I used to do typical magazines like Female, Neo, all those kinds of magazines. But when I quit the company, I still continued on doing glam for like until just recently.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So once you share your screen, I will switch brought the live view to just your screen.
Okay. Okay, maybe we can start with this.
It's your screen is not shared. Maybe you try again.
Okay.
You need to click share screen now or something. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay,
Is
so
it?
yes.
Okay. I am using this as a starting point because so the one on the left shows you. So this was the first issue, one of the first issues of Glam. I think the third issue back in 2004.
So this is Glam Malaysia, right? This is Malaysia, right?
There's only Glam Malaysia.
Yeah.
We wouldn't put in any other country.
Yeah.
So the one on the left basically shows you what other magazines look like at the time that we launched.
Yeah.
So I just wanted that kind of comparison.
Yeah.
So when we launched Glam as a high-end luxury Malay magazine, there was a lot of prejudice against it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because most people don't see Malay magazines as being high-end at all.
Yeah.
So we were working against a lot of preconceptions. But as you can see, when we launched it, Glam really made an impact because I think we started to showcase local people in a very glamorous, aspirational way, and it completely changed, I think, people's perception of what a Malaysian magazine could look like, and particularly a Malay magazine.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I was based out of Singapore then, and then I was trying to get some Singapore photographers, some famous ones that I will not name, to try and shoot for this magazine. And even Singapore photographers were very biased against it. Some people turned me down. It's like, I don't think I want to do a Malay magazine. That's not kind of my audience. And so, but I really took it as a challenge.
Yeah.
To make it look good. This is a recent one, the last one that I did for Glam, which is in December of 2018. This is Ali Mukris. Ali Mukris is actually Mahathir, our ex-PM's granddaughter.
Recently ex.
Recently ex, yeah. Well, ex then recently ex, yeah. Yeah. So I mean,
she's pretty, yeah. Mahathir has good genes.
Yeah, not bad. I mean, there's the other side of the family which I'm not familiar with, but she's I think she's big on social media, which is probably one of the reasons why we featured her.
Okay.
So she's wearing Chanel. So with Glam, what I found really interesting with Glam was I could get away with doing a lot of things because obviously with magazines we generally get a lot of freedom, actually, or at least with mine anyway, I get a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
So this was done in August of 2018. It was just after Pakatan won the election and got rid of UMNO. We won't go into the politics.
Yeah.
But this was a very cheeky cover that I kind of conceived. It might not be very obvious to some people, but basically, so this is a local celebrity. She's quite a famous actress.
Yeah.
We put a wig on her. As you can see, the wig has two colors, a light blue, which is actually the color of Pakatan.
Yeah.
And the dark blue is actually the color of UMNO.
Okay.
So as you can see, she's actually cutting off the dark.
Okay, that's quite clever.
And then on the inside pages, you will see that she has no longer, she has a shorter hair, which is all light blue, and then she looks all pretty and all that.
Okay.
And then if you look at all the colors, like the red, the blues, and even the yellow scissors, it's actually the colors of the Malaysian flag.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, these are things that are really very, very fun for me in terms of editorial that you can do. Because in the real world, in the commercial world, nobody will ask for an image like this, So Unfortunately, I no longer do editorial work, so I think this is kind of what I miss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long does it take for you to put a cover like this together?
Because I've been doing it for so long, the process is quite nicely streamlined. So what usually will happen is my editor will send me an email saying who they want to feature for the cover, and then what kind of clothes we have to feature,
Yeah.
and maybe what kind of jewelry. So all that is kind of set. I don't really have a lot of say.
Yeah.
But within that, I'm okay to do whatever I want basically without, obviously you cannot offend anybody. And sometimes things are dicey, like even with this cover, right? I'm sometimes surprised as to what I can get away with basically.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, the celebrity might act up, but because Glam has been running for so many years, I think there's a lot of trust with the local people as to what we are capable of.
Yeah.
So, like, for instance, some of these Malay celebrities, usually they don't even wear anything that will show that much skin.
Yeah.
So, but with Glam, we always seem to get away with it. Another good case in point is this cover here, which is Siti Nurhaliza. Siti Nurhaliza is like the biggest celebrity, I would say, in Malaysia.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, she's actually known for wearing a tudung, a hijab, all the time.
Yeah.
And then here we managed to convince her that a wig is kind of like a hijab, so
Okay.
which is like the weirdest thing. But and then we style her as Madonna, which is kind of like
Yeah, I can see the resemblance. Yeah.
possibly the most sexualized singer ever.
Yeah.
So I just think that's quite funny. But this had a lot of impact when so it was a series of 4 covers. We did her as 4 different types of Madonna.
Yeah.
And it got so big that it came out in the evening news. These covers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So people were talking about it, but she also got a lot of backlash, to be honest. So.
Okay. Yeah. So the discussion was not that good, lah. They didn't. The general public didn't like
No,
it.
no. There were a lot of people that really, really loved it.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of very judgmental fans as well, like
Yeah.
how could she appear with hair, all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this all goes into very sexist kind of like discussion, which I think
Yeah.
probably not the time for it. Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah. This is another cover that I was kind of famous for. So another August cover, so showing an Indian, Malaysian, a Malay person and a Chinese person. They're all Malaysians. But the interesting thing is they're all wearing Chanel jackets. But then I paired them with like batik sarongs and saris and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I think this was also never done before. Like if you look at every other magazine around here, if it's a Chanel cover, they are usually wearing head to toe Chanel. Nobody quite dresses them like that.
Yeah. So where the batik from? Where is the batik from?
Oh, I just bought them from Arab Street.
Oh, so they okay. So they're not like
Actually mine, or we source them, like the sari and all that. And then we also got local designers to do like batik inspired stuff and sari inspired stuff, and then we paired it together. I think the point that I want to make here is if you compare with what Glam was doing in Malaysia versus some of the Singapore magazines.
Yeah.
Singapore magazines, I think obviously everybody's losing readership, but I think it's particularly bad in Singapore mainly because I feel Singapore magazines do not have their own identity.
Yeah.
They're constantly featuring 16-year-old Russian girls.
Yeah.
Wearing designer brands. There's no differentiation. Whereas in Malaysia, particularly with Glam, as far back as 10 years, 15 years ago, we were doing stuff like this.
Yeah.
So what I found was the local audience was very, very engaged because you're using local faces, local models, local celebrities. People actually know them.
Yeah.
And then you are showcasing Malaysianness in a very aspirational way, which nobody had ever seen before. Yeah. And then you are telling local stories. So it just moved fashion from a very superficial thing to something that has a lot more depth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was really the secret of our success. So this was another significant cover for Glam. This was the first time I think any Malaysian magazine had shot haute couture. So basically, this is like super expensive Chanel dress.
Yeah.
which shot in Paris at the Chanel boutique, right in the middle of town.
Yeah.
This is another significant series of covers, our 10-year anniversary, and we did 10 covers of 10 different women
For one issue.
for one issue. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Well,
we were, doing crazy stuff like that, which was a lot of fun.
what's the print run?
The print run, the
Yeah.
number of copies. Honestly, I can't remember.
Yeah.
I think it's about 10K, but I'm not sure.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's Glam, but I also do other magazines in Malaysia. So this is for a while I was also doing stuff like Her World in Malaysia. A very different direction, obviously. Very friendly. I was also doing Malaysia Marie Claire. Yeah, just a mix.
Were these all under the same publishing house, or
Yeah, so this is all under Blue Ink.
Okay.
So it gets a bit complicated because I was the creative director of Blue Ink in Singapore.
Yeah.
So KL was our Malaysia office basically. So when I quit Blue Ink, I had an informal agreement with the Malaysia office that I would do Glam, and I stopped doing everything else. But eventually, they also asked me to help out with magazines, like for instance this Marie Claire, when they were doing revamps, or when they took over other publishers' magazines. Then sometimes I'll come in and help them revamp everything.
Okay.
Do you want to look at some fashion spreads?
Yeah, we can quickly sort of cycle through them.
Okay. So like I was saying, I get a lot of freedom to do all kinds of stuff. So this was one of the fashion stories that I do. So every month, basically, I used to do the cover story, and one very big fashion spread for them.
Yeah.
So this particular one, obviously, is based on that old erotic movie, 9.5 Weeks.
Yeah, with Kim Basinger.
With Kim Basinger, yeah. People of our generation should know.
Yeah.
But here I'm using a local actress, quite a famous one called Kavita.
Yeah.
She's a director and an actress as well. And she had recently gotten married to an Italian guy.
Yeah.
And so I concocted this erotic story for them. But of course, there's a limit to what I can show. So all these are obviously based off the movie.
Yeah.
So we were referring to the movie and then recreating it. In terms of so obviously, like if you see the one on the right, she's wearing like a Burberry coat, which obviously is not in the movie, but everything is made to look very, very cinematic.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are the kind of stories that I really love doing. So this was like a 2-day shoot.
Where was all this?
Actually, mostly in the studio. So for instance, like this picture with the nice New York background is all faked. So it's all shot in the studio, then we kind of strip in the background.
Okay.
But stuff like this where they're in the hotel room, so we were actually in an actual hotel room. So we spent one day in a penthouse shooting all this. Then, this is all in the penthouse. This too. Then stuff like this with the window is in the studio recreated.
Okay.
With clever lighting.
Yeah. So with all these images, they are all done with one photographer that you work with all the time for all the spreads.
Yeah, it's a photographer called Bustamam. So we get along very, very well. So I've been working with him for a very long time. So let me see what else I can show you. Yeah, one photographer. But what I do is I direct him, and then I actually retouch the images myself.
Yep.
And so all these spreads are also designed by me. So sometimes it's very hard to describe what I do. It's like I kind of like do everything. So this one is interesting too. So this was a fashion spread where I was making fun of other magazines. As you know, like maybe 1-2 years ago, I mean, even currently, there's this big explosion in indie magazines.
Yep.
And what really kind of irritated me was all these magazines kind of looked the same. Everybody had big, giant white border around it and the picture in the middle. So basically, this was just a kind of like a subtle piss take on all these magazines. So obviously, the first one you see here is called Jin Folk, but the actual magazine is Kin Folk, which I believe is oh no, it's not a Singapore magazine. It's Kin Folk.
Yeah.
And then so we just changed the K to it.
The Kinfolk is the kind of one of the magazines that kind of started it all, right?
Sort of, yeah, I guess you could say that. I mean, indie magazines have been around for a very long time, but this particular look maybe was kicked off by King. So, but I just basically took a whole bunch of like, so this is Serial magazine, which we changed to G-Real because glam, right? So we changed everything to G. So yeah, and then I even make fun of the cover lines, you know, like really, I mean, the cover lines are just decorative, right? I mean, if you look at how they do the cover lines, it doesn't even mean anything. One, Tokyo, and then usually they have Paris. And I just changed mine to Terengganu because it's quite funny.
Yeah.
You know, but obviously the fashion itself is serious. So the images are very aspirational.
Yeah.
But then there's this subtle kind of like sarcasm going on. Sometimes I don't know whether our audience really picks up on it, but whatever. I have fun. Yeah. This is Vulture, supposed to be Vulture. Vulture, I think, is a Singapore magazine.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so these stories will run for like 20 pages, 25 pages. Yeah. This is another interesting one. So this is a jewelry spread, but instead of doing the typical jewelry spread, I styled these almost like fashion perfume ads, typography and everything.
Yeah.
But then the perfume ads are based on local spices and herbs and condiments. So like for instance, this one looks like a Calvin Klein ad, but it's actually chili.
Oh.
So I mean it's subtle. This is ginger, which alia is ginger in Malay.
Yeah.
This one's funny because belacan. I'm sure you know what belacan is. Yeah, but then we shot the belacan to look like a perfume bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that square on the model's face.
Yeah, that's quite nice. So you masked and you did some spray.
Yeah, that's just foundation.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is coconut milk. So she's wearing very expensive Mikimoto pearls and a Chanel top, and then we sprayed white paint on her face. So it's a fine line, right? You're making fun of things, and then you're taking the piss out of things, but the pictures are still very aspirational and beautiful. So I think that's how we get away with a lot of stuff. So even if you don't get it and you don't read too deeply into the images, you are still kind of like, I guess, seduced by the pictures.
Yeah.
What else? So this is another interesting one. This was a whole spread. So this was done on Valentine's for February issue, so Valentine's Day. It's kind of a bit complicated to explain. So the whole story is about white clothes.
Yeah.
But instead of doing the typical like model standing in the studio wearing white, we based this around the legend of Pontianak. And as you know, Pontianak is this local kind of like Malay ghost that has long black hair. She wears white, and then she hangs around the kampong, you know, killing people.
Well, this Pontianak's kampong very very glam.
I don't know, but it's an actual kampong house. We actually went outside, drove for a few hours outside of KL to source for this house, and this doesn't let us use his house.
Yeah.
But of course, this Pontianak is wearing designer clothes, lah. Yeah. So even the captions themselves, the introductory text, right? I mean, we say it all in a funny way, like on Valentine's Day, you may be alone, but you can still look good, like the Pontianak, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it really had a lot of fun. Like, this one's quite creepy. Yeah. So this is a shot in natural light. So obviously it's a slow shutter speed, and I discovered accidentally that if she moves really fast, everything blurs out. So she's like shaking her hands and kind of like moving her head a little bit. Yeah. That's why it looks like that. Yeah. So yeah. having fun. Then, of course, over the years, we've done a lot of like really glamorous shoots because brands pay us to go to different countries. So this is part of the Paris one that you saw the cover earlier.
Yeah.
This one was done in London.
Wow, got budget, huh?
It's paid for by whoever brand that wants to pay for us. The magazine itself usually don't have that much budget. This was paid for by Louis Vuitton, so we went to Melbourne to shoot in a 50s style house,
Yeah.
which I managed to find online. Very hard to find a 50s house.
So
Yeah.
you did your scouting yourself online.
Yeah, for these overseas shoots, usually I'm the one planning it. And thank goodness for the internet because then, with the internet, you can really find a lot of stuff if you look hard enough.
Yeah.
So this actually I sourced online. I looked through a whole bunch of websites and I found this house that was for rent.
Yeah.
This was in the suburbs of Melbourne. You could actually see kangaroos outside actually. Yeah, so it's preserved from the 50s. It's called the Boyd Baker House.
Okay.
So most people use it for weddings or whatever. Huge house. So we stayed there for a few days and we shot there.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's another shot of the house as you can see. Really beautiful.
So for a shoot like this, how big is the crew? That's you, photographer.
Yeah, usually a photographer's assistant, usually a fashion editor follows me. Hair, makeup, the celebrity. Sometimes the celebrity comes with a manager.
Yep.
7 to 8,
Okay.
which isn't a lot actually. It's a very skeleton crew.
Yep.
Yeah. So this one was India, New Delhi. Yeah. Also paid for by Louis Vuitton. Louis Vuitton and Chanel, I think, paid for a lot of trips. This was another Chanel trip to Morocco, Marrakesh.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So this I found the place online, but this one I got through Stephanie Cheah, which is one of your clients.
Yep.
Yeah. So she runs a luxury website, and at that time, this hotel was under her care.
Yeah.
So we got in touch and they agreed to let us stay there for free because it was low season, but we had to pay for food. So different kinds of arrangements. Arranging for overseas shoots is just a complete job in itself,
Yeah.
Quite difficult to do. Coordinating everybody's schedules, making sure the model can get there. Like this model, Gwen, she's actually from Penang, but she's actually based in London and Greece. So there's a lot of coordination to how to get her to Marrakesh in time to meet us, arranging for visas, all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll show one more. So I think with the glam work, another interesting thing is this kind of like discovery of Malaysian identity. Like for instance, I think before us, nobody really featured pure Indian girls in high fashion magazines.
Yeah.
You really rarely see it. So we were one of the first magazines to start doing that. So this girl is a pure Tamil girl called Vanitza, and I discovered her on Instagram.
Okay.
So she had done some really nice shoots, and she posted it on, I think, Facebook. And then I just contacted her and say, hey, can you come? And then so she shows up, and we did a gigantic spread for her. This was a September issue spread, meaning there were a lot of different brands and different clothes. So we gave her, I think, on that day, 22 to 24 different looks. So obviously this picture that you're seeing, she's wearing Coach.
Yeah.
And we styled her completely differently and used different lighting, different hair, everything different for every single picture. So this is DKNY. As you can see, she's got a wig on. The makeup has changed. This is for Prada. Everything has changed as well.
Yeah.
Dolce, featuring my half-naked makeup artist. That's called Abuse.
But was she a professional model already, or?
No, she was not at that time. She had done some online modeling,
Yeah.
but she wasn't big.
Yeah.
But I think after she appeared in this gigantic spread, suddenly she had a portfolio of high-end clothes. I don't think she had ever done high-end clothes.
Yeah.
And she just exploded after that. Now she's everywhere. So because of that, now she goes over for India Fashion Week, and she's actually managed to get on some of the catwalk for the bigger brands in India.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's happened quite a fair bit with glam. We've managed to I guess, launch people's careers.
Yep.
Because once you see that they are able to portray all these different looks, obviously everybody's confidence goes up, right? That, oh, okay, she's capable of looking like this, and everybody starts talking about them.
Yep.
You know? Yeah, so a lot, and it was a very fun shoot. And she was a natural model. Sometimes I take a big risk because obviously when I'm sourcing for these people, I'm not even in the same country. So I'm having a lot of faith that they can perform on the day.
Yeah.
And I think very often, my hunch pays off. Like Vanessa is a real natural model.
Yeah. No, and if you don't see them in person, right, you just cross your fingers that they'll show up with good skin.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And you have to be very smart about it, right? Like, are the photos that you're seeing super touched up? So you have to be very careful, like, okay, are their skin really that good? Are they really that tall,
Yeah.
So you have to really look very carefully. Yeah. So that's magazine work. What else do we want to talk about?
Maybe you can share a bit about the project, the Bicentenary project. I think that's a good one to look at. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Bicentennial.
Yeah, so maybe just give a brief intro what this project is, and then we'll talk through them.
Yeah. So 2018 was the 200-year, I guess, anniversary of Raffles landing in Singapore. So basically, there was a special team of people set up by the government called the Singapore Bicentennial Office. So they were put in charge of kind of like, they don't want us to use the word celebration, so it's actually everything is a commemoration. Because the thing is, in this day and age, everything is politically sensitive in terms of like, I guess they don't want to be seen like celebrating a white man coming to Singapore and starting off Singapore, right?
Yeah.
So I think that can be seen in a very bad way. So the idea here was that we will use the occasion to reflect on what it means to be a Singaporean and where we had come from.
Yeah.
So the SVO office was actually helmed by this person called Jean Tan. He's a former librarian. Very, very smart person, and I would have to say one of the best clients we ever had. So basically, Jean masterminded everything. He's the one that planned like how everything would go. So the Bicentenary Experience is actually the kind of like the apex, I guess, of the whole bicentennial year. So what it is a very unique multimedia show. So you come to Fort Canning Park. There's an old colonial building at the top, and basically you go through this show to showcase 700 years of Singapore history back to like Sang Nila Utama, which is almost like fairy tale type of like history, right up to present day, Lee Kuan Yew, etc. So this was a project that we worked on for 2 years, and it just wrapped up before all this COVID stuff happened. So I'm just going to show you the building itself. So this is the building that we did the show in. So I was engaged as the art director. We were working with our creative directors, Beatrice Cheah and Michael Chiang.
Okay.
And then I think there's the team was about 150 people at least working on this for 2 years. And that's not including the outside help that we were getting. So we had a design team that we had engaged, for instance, in London at the very early stages to help us conceptualize some of this stuff. And then a lot of equipment was brought in from Japan, all these kind of things. It's a very difficult thing to explain. So this building that you see, you go in and then you go through a multimedia show. in five rooms, very, very different. And the whole idea was to give you a show that nobody had ever seen before. So let me show you maybe the first room that you go into. Okay, so this was some of the spaces. So as you go in, there's a visitors gallery. The welcome sign that you see, that was also designed by me. It's the word welcome fades in and out, so that's like moving typography, which is interesting. And then this is the visitors gallery. So this whole space I had to design using the branding graphics.
Yep.
And if you see those cutout light boxes on the wall, the client wanted that as kind of like a prequel to the actual show, almost like movie posters, so they tell you kind of like what to expect in each of the rooms.
Yep.
But I find that most people don't bother reading it, so they just stand in front of it and take selfies, you know.
But so you were working with a lighting specialist, or how did it?
Yeah, so there were a lot of different people. One of the key people we had was a technical director called Kenny.
Yeah.
So I was working with Kenny on some of these spaces as well. So for instance, obviously the space is fixed because we were given that space by the government to work with. It's a very old building, so there were a lot of challenges. For instance, like the ceilings cannot take certain loads. So, there are certain things that cannot be done.
Yeah.
So constantly the design had to be changed. So that kind of affected me as well. Like, what can I put up? What can I not put up? So I was working with Kingsman, who are the builders actually. And so, for instance, in this room, originally I wanted a bare ceiling that you could see all the pipes and stuff, but it would have cost too much to take down this particular ceiling and then put it back up again after the show. So there was a lot of compromises that, we had to do.
Yeah.
So working with a lot of different people, I would get the measurements from them, work out the graphics, give it back to them, and then sometimes go on site to check the stuff that they had done.
Yep.
So the first room that you go in after that gallery space is, so this is called the reverse rain room. So this was quite spectacular as well. You enter a dark room, you see actual water coming down, and at a certain stage when the show actually starts, the music starts, the water actually goes backwards, physically backwards. So that's when you hear a lot of gasps from the audience, like you can literally see water drops going up in the air. So that's done through strobe lighting, which was a special kind of technology we sourced from Japan. And we got the Japanese people to come here and try and do it. But even that really stretched their technical limitations because they had never done anything quite so big before.
Yeah.
And on this kind of scale, so it took them quite a while it took the Japanese team quite a while to figure it out as well. So
with something like this, like what was your involvement with something like this?
Yeah, so even for me, I wasn't sure how I would be involved. I mean, from the very beginning, the obvious thing that I would be doing would be the branding graphics and signage, and we had like guidebooks. So all that is print related. So obviously, I was going to be in charge of that. But because I think I was part of the core team from the very, very beginning, I was involved in all the meetings. So even in stuff like this, which is the actual show, which I originally wasn't supposed to be involved in, I got involved in. So for instance, if you see that circular disc that everybody's looking at with the map, so that's designed by one of our animation teams. Okay. So it's an animated map that shows Singapore and the region over a couple of 100 years, and showing how like different weather phenomenon affected how Singapore was in terms of its trade, stuff like that.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, so when they were showing us animatics and rough sketches, so very soon I realized there's also a lot of typography involved in this work.
Yeah.
So then that's when I come in, because they are really good animators, but they're not necessarily typographers. Yeah. So as the work started, people were using all kinds of like different typefaces, all this kind of stuff. So that's where I felt I had to step in, and I actually produced a typography guide for the visuals. So like how to space out the typography, which kind of typeface, what should it do, what shouldn't it do. I had input in like, because this is designed to be like some kind of like magic compass, like things can be read, cannot be read, all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's move on. Yeah.
Yep. So after this room, you go on to this other room, which was quite cool too. So what you see is a stage. So everything looks like a diorama.
Yeah.
And when people come in, people actually think that they're looking at mannequins, but actually these are live actors
Okay.
portraying different characters, and they're actually standing on a treadmill. So as the show goes on, the background changes, they fight, there are soldiers coming out, all this kind of stuff. So it's like a very unusual stage performance.
Mm-hmm.
This is another view that you will get.
Kind of reminds me a little bit about that installation at T2 or T1. Can't remember.
A little bit, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So like this is a Silat guy, fighting, and then there'll be all kinds of projections even on those slats that you see on the ceiling and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
So what sort of involvement would you have with these sort of theatrical installments? Or did you have any sort of input or?
Uh, yes and no, not in the overall design. I think the initial idea came from us.
Yeah.
Then there was a London team that specialized in some of these things that we engaged.
Yeah.
And they helped us put together some of the designs, but their contract was only for like a few months,
Yeah.
like 3 months or so. And so after the contract ended, we took over everything and we kept refining it because, you can imagine there are so many rounds of changes because people have input as to like, because we have actual historians involved in this as well.
Yeah.
So they'll be like commenting on costumes because it's not just a show, right? It's not arbitrary decision. So the costumes have to be right, the silat has to be right, the ships that you see in the background have to be the right kind of ships, so there was all this kind of like to and fro for all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to show you, like, for instance, we had to do a big shoot for all the animation stuff. So you see the guy that's Sang Nila Utama, the supposed original founder of Singapore. So this was a huge shoot that we did for all the extra people elements. This is another one. So like here, we had to build an authentic trishaw, rickshaw. And so because I come from this fashion kind of background, I had some input, like in maybe some of the colors of the clothes.
Yeah.
And I had a say in some of the casting as well. So with the casting, we were like, okay, this person looks like he came from that era. This person, no, just little bits like that. It's all stuff that originally I wasn't supposed to be doing. But
Which studio is that? It's massive.
yeah, I'm not supposed to say where. For a dumb reason, actually, but I was not supposed to say where. So, okay, I'm going to show you something interesting.
Yeah.
So this is a slide from another lecture that I gave recently about my work. So this is where I think my work came in unexpectedly. So one of the old characters we had to portray was William Pickering. So if you see the picture on the far left, William Pickering at 58. That was the only picture that we could find of William Pickering, and he's obviously quite old then. But in our story, in Act 3, which showed the kind of like the industrial rise of Singapore,
Yeah.
we had to show William Pickering at much younger age, like maybe in his late 30s.
Yeah.
And we were casting characters based on him being late 30s. So it was quite difficult to cast a character when you don't have a reference picture and the only picture you have is almost 60 years old.
Yeah.
This is when then Michael kind of like turned and looked at me during the meeting and said, "You're good at Photoshop, why don't you do it?" So I took it on as a challenge.
Yeah.
So if you look at the picture right in the middle that had the word William Pickering 37,
Yeah.
so that's actually an artificial picture that I created.
Oh, okay.
So the picture underneath him, there's that very handsome guy was something that I found online, the right era.
Yeah.
So I basically tweaked that picture and combined it with the old picture of Pickering to get that kind of like mutant, non-existing picture of Pickering at 37.
Ah, okay.
And if you see look at the color photograph, that's the guy that we cast to play William Pickering, and you can see it's kind of influenced by the picture that I created.
Ah, okay.
So this is where I think one of the more unusual circumstances of how I got my skills got involved. I mean, obviously we didn't plan for this at all, but I think we were all really trying to help each other as a creative team.
Yeah,
So whatever skills we have, we just pitch in now.
yeah,
Anyway, how often am I gonna get to do work like this? This
yeah.
almost never happens, you know.
So I mean, this project obviously is very high profile within the context of Singapore, right?
Yeah.
So how tricky was the approval process or whatever, you know?
I think, like I said earlier, the magic ingredient is really the client, which is Gene.
Okay,
So Gene was I guess, the mediator between us, the creative team, and the ministers. So obviously, a lot of this had to be approved by the ministers.
yeah,
And so he was the one that was taking all our work and going over there to talk to the ministers and getting a lot of stuff approved. Yeah, so I would say it's fairly smooth going because actually Gene, unlike most clients, was the one that was pushing us to be very creative.
yeah.
So we were doing a lot of stuff, and sometimes he would say, "I've seen that before.
Okay,
Let's not do that." So which is uh, a good segue for me, for instance, to talk about this. So outside the actual show, we even have 7 to 8 pavilions that showcase different aspects of Singapore
yeah,
um, in terms of its history. So what you're seeing here, this is called the Emporium of the East. The pavilions are actually designed by an architect firm called Zak Associates. So when they design it, they actually design the content as well. But because because they're not graphic designers, the way they approach the content sometimes was maybe a little bit too straightforward. And so, for instance, here, this emporium, what it actually showcases is all the things that were traded in Singapore in the 14th century.
mm,
So, for instance, like hornbill, like porcelain, all this kind of stuff.
yeah,
But what the client didn't want was a very typical museum representation of like little bits and pieces in glass cases.
yeah,
So the idea here was we would represent these things. What we did was we 3D scanned a lot of these things and blew it up to giant size. So some of these are actually like maybe like 2 centimeters in size, but we blew them up to like say like a meter in length, all this kind of stuff.
yeah,
And then the idea here is to showcase these old objects as if they were a high fashion boutique. Like it's almost like a pop-up fashion store,
yeah,
which is why we have this cool like blue lighting. And if you look at the way the captions are designed, which I did, so they're designed like packaging. It's like kind of like cool streetwear. They're not like tiny little captions at the bottom, and then they're kind of plastered in different angles all over the objects themselves.
okay.
So again, this was not planned for. I wasn't really supposed to do stuff like that, but because I was doing the signage for these pavilions anyway, so I really got involved in the content of it.
And the fact that you're getting paid already shiploads, right?
You know, Everybody thinks that, but for the amount of work that we put in and for the fact that it's a 2 year period, I don't think we were paid quite as much as you think.
Oh,
But
so
we were
this
paid
this this
enough.
whole thing was 2 years.
2 years.
Like you were working on this full time for 2 years.
I wouldn't say full time because I was obviously doing other stuff as well. But
Yeah.
I was having meetings twice a week for 2 years,
Oh
and
wow.
that's
Okay.
just meetings.
Yeah.
That's the actual work. So this is another pavilion called the Seed Conservatory. So originally, when Zak, for instance, designed this, they had wanted the original plants of Singapore to be actually growing from seeds and suspended from the ceiling. So that was the original design of this. But we quickly discovered that that wasn't going to work because one, all seeds looked the same and visually it wasn't going to look very interesting.
Yeah.
And Parks told us, because they were our consultant, that the plants will die very quickly and it's going to turn real ugly real fast.
Yeah.
So very soon it became a different thing. So because I was in that meeting, I had this idea to use the Farquhar prints, which are these old botanical drawings commissioned by William Farquhar
Yeah.
back in the day. And I had this idea that we will use the prints, but then change them into this weird kind of like bamboo grove idea So each of the stick that you see in the middle represent a plant that had been in early Singapore. Either they are native or they were brought in by the colonizers. So they have things like chili, which actually came from South America. You've got coffee, durian, stuff like that. So it was a very different interpretation of Farquhar prints, and very, very unique because nobody had seen Farquhar prints that wrapped around a pole like that. So I actually individually designed every single one of these, because obviously if you can imagine the Farquhar prints, like they're just like maybe one durian in the middle of a page, and I had to make it wrapped a very, very long shape up and down. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, very interesting. And then after, what happened after that? Okay. So here are maybe some of the. So this was the typography work that I did for the actual show. So this was a guide
Yep.
for the animators. And here, for instance, like I'm explaining how to do typography across the imagery, fading in and fading out, and then commenting on their work. So the top part that you see was maybe the original animation. So the bottom part was my suggestion, the type is too thick, and I don't like it aligned. Can we just slide it back and forth, stuff like that?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so after the book, after the show, so I was actually responsible for a coffee table book as well, which is the behind the scenes
Yep.
of the show. So yeah, so this was just completed a few months ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so it showcases like some of the original sketches, some of our filming, the actual show itself. So for instance, this is interesting. It's a 360-degree screen. So as the audience sits in the middle, the screen envelops them and the seats move. So you are actually rotated as well. Yeah, so these are some of the early sketches.
Okay. All right. Great. Maybe let's switch back to having a chat. Huh?
Okay.
Is there anything else you wanted to show, or you're good?
There's a whole bunch of stuff, but we can go back to talking first.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. Let me see. Okay. So well, we're getting some nice comments coming in. So people seem to like the work that you're showing. Hang on now. So I guess one of the questions I would ask is, I think because a lot of my audience as well, they are kind of like freelancers, for example, working by themselves. So what you've been working by yourself now, freelance, for quite a long time now. How many years? 20 years?
Maybe not quite, but almost.
Yeah. So how do you keep going? Especially you're working from home. You're by yourself. You got to manage your finances, your jobs,
Yeah.
how does that all sort of work out?
I mean, I don't enjoy doing the other bits that are non-creative,
Yeah.
but obviously somebody's got to do the invoicing, right? Otherwise, I'm not going to get paid.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the motivation for that. I would say, I mean, there's a reason why I called my company CLANHOUSE. The idea was always to work with other people.
Yeah.
So even though I'm actually based at home, so obviously a lot of my work I have to depend on working with, for instance, hair and makeup people, photographers, and obviously I'm the one that's meeting up with the clients because I don't have a project manager.
Yeah.
So all that actually I really enjoy, because I think the contrast with working now versus when I was a creative director and like leading a team of like 20 creative people, right?
Yeah.
Is very, very different, because back then, because the company was so big, I found that all I was doing was attending meetings nonstop.
Yeah.
And the meetings often had very little to do with creative work.
Yeah.
I was just managing other people, other people's problems. Like one of my designers, the work is going down. I have to figure out why.
Yeah.
Why does that person want to quit? Why does that person, it's all kinds of stuff that we are not trained to do.
Yeah.
I don't mind learning all that stuff, but it's not really. So I think when I formed CLANHOUSE, the idea was that I would go back to controlling my own work and my creative work,
Yeah.
and getting a lot more satisfaction out of it rather than running around managing a company.
Yeah.
So I think because that was the original idea for CLANHOUSE, that has always motivated me. The idea was always, so for instance, with the fashion work, it was always that joy of like, okay, I get this so much freedom to do stuff that I love. Let's get the maximum fun out of this shoot.
Yeah.
So every single job that I get, that's kind of the motivation. Like, how do we get this to be extremely interesting for me?
Yeah. But what about just operating as a one-man business, for example, because obviously you're although you're a one-man show and, what you could refer to yourself as a freelancer, or you could, but the actual fact is that, you're running a business, you need to get income in, and all that.
I think I was very lucky. So when I came out on my own, Glam basically was my main client.
Okay.
And so the good thing about magazine work is every month, right? Every month I knew I was going to do this kind of work for them. I would get in this kind of money.
Yeah.
So, and because I had worked it out such that I got paid quite well.
Yep.
So that was good and bad actually, because, obviously it sustained me and I really paid a lot of attention to that kind of work. But I also think it kind of made me a little bit lazy.
Yep.
So because that was very comfortable and that was coming in every month, I didn't really look around for a lot of other work.
Yeah.
So the only other work that I kept on doing back in the early days was people came to see me, because Glam, a lot of people know that magazine. So clients or certain celebrities will look at my work and actually they will approach me. So I don't even have to go out looking for people. The magazine became like my advertisement, so to speak, because everybody saw it. Yeah. So I would get random people calling me up, telling me they want to do this kind of shoot, or they want me to be involved in something like this. So there was, in the early years, there was a lot of work coming that way. I mean, there was a work that I can't even talk about, like random weird rich people calling me up to do stuff, and just do like personal shoots and stuff like that, stuff that I can't even show. Yeah, so
there was never a point in time where you were at a point where, oh shit, I don't have anything for the next few months.
Not really. So that only recently just happened, because at the end of 2018, because all the magazines were suffering and Glam wasn't making enough money, so actually they stopped my contribution to them. Yeah. So that's when I think the first time that I felt like maybe a little bit of panic, like, okay, I no longer have a steady income. Yep. So that's when, after so many years, the first reality of being a consultant and a freelancer really, really hit. Yep. But having said that, I was also quite lucky, because around that time, I also got a gig to work as a consulting creative director for a social media agency. Yep. So I've been doing that since then. So that kind of like tied over nicely with the ending of one kind of stable work and the start of another kind of work.
Yeah. So I guess that this is a good sort of segue into the next topic that we'll discuss, which is the demise of the magazine world. Obviously, you said that it all stopped in 2018, and I think, from what I hear, there's a latest news as well from Blue Ink. So do you want to talk about this whole sort of demise of the magazine world?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, by the end of 2018, I was no longer doing much or any magazine work, not steadily anyway. So Blue Ink is the company that I was doing Glam for and all those other magazines, and that's based in KL. So they are the biggest magazine publisher in Malaysia. So they own Harper's Bazaar, Marie Claire, My Magazine Glam, Chinese magazines like Niu, big women's magazine like Female, Men's Health, Her World, Women's Weekly, Clio, everything basically. Because in the recent years, they've been buying up a lot of rivals as well. So I think, gosh, what was it, two weeks ago? Yeah. So everybody was in lockdown, obviously, everywhere. 2 weeks ago, everybody in Blue Ink Malaysia received a very stunning email saying that the whole company is closed immediately.
Wow. So how many magazines is that?
Gosh, I think every significant magazine in Malaysia died immediately.
Wow.
So it's
Just like that.
yeah, literally like a Thanos snap, but actually done with an email. Everything was gone. I think the staff was just shell shocked. I mean, from what I hear, they had been winding down for a fair bit already. The signs were all there.
Yeah.
But I think the virus just made everything worse, you know.
Yeah.
Because I suspect clients were calling in to cancel ads.
Yeah.
So I think all the money just kind of disappeared. So the board decided to just shut everything down.
But do you think it's also partly because traditional media not, you know, sort of taking a step forward towards, you know, the digital platform? I don't know what Blue Ink was or wasn't doing within the digital sphere.
I mean, I definitely have my opinions because for me, I could see the digital world coming very, very rapidly.
Yep.
So even when I was working with them, I remember many instances when I said, guys, you have to take this digital thing very, very seriously. So what I was telling them to do was actually to set up almost like, you have to think of yourself almost like a TV station. You have to produce video work now. You have to produce animation work now. You have to set up specific studios.
Yeah.
You know, so that's in my head. That's where I see everything going. But unfortunately, I mean, I can't judge, but I will. But I don't think Blue Ink took that very, very seriously at the very, very beginning.
Yeah.
You know, so the outlay towards the digital side, I think, was very minimal at the very beginning. Like you have one camera person servicing all these, 15, 20 magazines, which is ridiculous. At the most, maybe one editor in charge of this. I think the mistake here was that from the very beginning, they should have started to see themselves as a media company specializing in digital rather than a print company dabbling in digital.
Yeah.
You know, the thinking should have been the other way around very, very early on. But I think, unfortunately, because Blue Ink was a very successful publisher, every single brand was coming to them. I do feel they sat on their laurels a little bit, because there was a lot of money coming in anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't really think they took it very, very seriously.
Yeah.
But I think in their defense, if you look at all the other magazines around the world, even the most famous one like a Vogue in US, right? Even people like Anna Wintour, they are struggling.
Yeah.
Because the problem is, even if you switch completely to digital, it's very hard to get the same kind of ad spend and money that you used to get from print.
Yeah.
So the conversion just isn't there. You know, even though, my website is getting a lot of hits, my Instagram is getting a lot of hits, but we're not getting the money that we used to get.
Yeah.
So it's a problem that I wouldn't know how to solve it.
Actually, that was what I was going to ask next. Like, do you have what are your thoughts on like how do we
I
change
think
this demise?
To me, what is interesting after working with this thing, because this thing, obviously we do social media and we run social media accounts for clients and campaigns, right? So for instance, like we run the social media account for Plaza Sing, right? Yeah. So with Plaza Sing, actually what's interesting is we tend to do a lot of content that is very similar to what I used to do for magazines. So we will feature beauty products, we will feature food, we will feature fashion. Yeah. And what I do realize is, weirdly, the talent that we used to have in print publishing in the magazine world has not really translated to the social media world, because that group of people has not really moved over to this side. Yeah. So now I'm getting designers that are good at what they do, but they're not necessarily trained in, for instance, like styling, putting together clothes that look interesting, they look convincing, They wouldn't know how to shoot, for instance, a lipstick, It's a very specific skill. Yeah. And all that is kind of lost. But maybe back to your original question, I feel that there could be a strategy to make a magazine work in 2020 onwards. I feel it has to be very, very online based now. Yeah. and maybe the print output has to be a sporadic thing.
Yeah.
So really, you have to see yourself as a social media machine first,
Yeah.
then with the occasional output in print. That's how I see it.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? Talking about this because I had a conversation with someone else the other day, and we were talking obviously about photographers, right? But I think photographers are like yourself. We're all within this sort of creative sort of field, right? And my opinion was that being the to survive now, you need to be multi-skilled. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't. I will speak for that conversation. I was saying you just can't rely on being a photographer or an image maker that just makes images. Those days, are gone. And I think the current situation now, especially with the lockdown, it exacerbates that. Because
Yeah.
basically, productivity the last few months has just been zero, and
Yeah.
everything's closing down. Everyone's like losing their jobs. So it's exacerbated. What do you think about that? Like, what are your thoughts?
To me, actually, even before the lockdown, this was something that I saw coming a long time already. I remember having a conversation with my photographer, the one that produced all those beautiful images that
Yeah.
you saw. And actually, what I told him was, these days, obviously everybody has a smartphone these days, right? And the cameras on the smartphones are getting better and better.
Yeah.
And I noticed this like 5-6 years ago. I was like, hey, if you look at everybody's holiday pictures on Instagram and sometimes Facebook, they are of the same quality as the kind of holiday pictures we used to produce for the magazines back in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Right? So I was telling the photographers, hey, this is very worrying.
Yeah.
Because basically somebody with no real training can just use their phone and take a picture that was as good as what the kind of work we used to do.
Yeah.
So then to me, that puts into question, like, what is then your contribution as a professional photographer?
Yeah.
Like, how are you then going to distinguish yourself from the auntie that can take really amazing holiday pictures?
Yeah.
Why should we pay you like, $1,000 a day to shoot holiday pictures when I can go there with my smartphone and
Yeah.
take the same kind of pictures and tweak it with my filters, right?
Yeah.
So to me, in the very beginning, even before all this virus stuff, this trend has been happening really. And I just think if you're not pushing yourself, you just get left behind.
Yeah. So has the lockdown affected you directly already?
Not so much, I would say. I think because of my work with Distinct, I've actually been pretty busy. We've been doing pictures and like just earlier I was telling you, we are actually setting up a website, kind of like capturing this moment in time for National Youth Council.
Yeah.
So basically, that was really, really interesting. We've commissioned like 100 sets of portraits of people. So to just like through virtual photo shooting, capturing different kind of young people in their homes, and then talking about their current experience in May. And so this is going to be launched, I think, sometime next week.
Okay.
So it will be a website called Dear COVID-19.
Okay.
And it basically is a whole bunch. It's a gallery of pictures of Singaporeans going through the COVID experience, and with a bit of writing as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's been really, really interesting because in the past few days I've had to like edit hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pictures. Yeah.
Okay. So what have you been eating the past few days in lockdown? let's
really
switch topic a bit.
There's been a bit of nostalgia eating.
Yeah.
I guess because I'm from Penang, so sometimes you crave stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about Penang food. Is Penang food better than Singaporean food or what?
That's not a topic you want to get into.
No, please, let's get into that.
Of course, it's better than Singapore food. I mean, no. I mean, seriously, if you're talking about hawker food, whatever equivalent that I would have in Penang, obviously, I'm going to prefer that.
Yeah.
Because that's what I grew up with.
Like what? Give me one example.
Wonton noodles, for instance.
Penang is
The
much better.
version here is generally horrendous.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
why is that? Why is that? Why is that the case?
it's just weird. Maybe these days I've gotten slightly more used to it, so I'm not as freaked out as I used to be. I remember the first year I came to Singapore and I had wonton noodles, and they had tomato ketchup in it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And to a Penang person, this is crazy. Like nobody does that. I mean, what are you, like a 5-year-old child to put a tomato ketchup in wonton noodles? That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You know. The other thing that I find weird about Singapore is the very inconsistent hawker food. Like, you know, you go to like one stall and you'll be a certain quality, and then you go to another stall, it's completely different quality.
Yeah.
And not just quality, but like completely different ingredients.
Yeah.
So there's very little consistency.
Yeah.
Whereas in Penang, that is not something that you will see. Like if it's wonton noodles, it's all the same everywhere. So some taste better, some maybe not taste not as good, but you won't get radically different ingredients.
Yeah.
So that's another weird thing.
Yeah.
The only real hawker food that I think they do better than Penang is chicken rice.
What? Say again?
Chicken rice. I think chicken rice here is generally better than Penang, but that's the only.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
There's
Penang chicken rice is not bad.
Is anyone in the audience from Penang that might disagree with him?
No, I think Penang people agree with me. Chicken rice, they do very well here. Lots of good chicken rice here.
Yeah.
But in Penang, not so much. Yeah.
Okay. So back to the question, what have you been eating the last few days?
I eat a lot of salads.
Yeah.
But I've been doing that for the last few years.
Yeah.
Because I have a very nice house.
Yeah.
I have a very nice kitchen, but I have nothing in my kitchen that actually can cook.
Yeah.
Not even microwave. So it's a showroom kitchen.
I entertained this idea of you maybe giving us a virtual tour of your house, because actually I've been to your house and I think it's beautiful, right? But you don't have a kitchen, you know. So I do know that. So
hard to give you a virtual tour because
Yeah.
I'm using iMac
Yeah.
to do this. I could probably find a picture of the house, but
yeah.
okay, keep talking.
So what I mean, I've you know, I've known you for a while and you've traveled quite a bit, you know. So of all these travels, right, which sort of food to you, you know, are your favorite, or you find the most interesting, you know? I know you mentioned you went to Pondicherry. Was it Pondicherry?
Yes, Pondicherry.
Yeah.
Amazing place.
Yeah. And is that the
What's funny is I realized in the last few years I've been going to places that look like Penang.
oh, yeah,
So
Pondicherry
it's like-
looks like Penang.
Yes, it does. So I don't think a lot of people have been to Pondicherry. It's super interesting.
Yeah.
I just found it by mistake when I was looking through a magazine.
Yeah.
We were discussing where to go for holiday, and I was like reading this article, and I just pointed, hey, that looks nice, let's go there. I think I'm more attracted to places that other people have not been, but they're not too far.
Yeah.
As much as I love going to London and Europe and all, it's too much. You know, the flight is forever, and then it's just too much. Yeah, so Pondicherry is quite close. It's about 3 hours away.
Yeah.
So what's different about Pondicherry is the only French colonized city in India.
Okay.
So when you go to Pondicherry, it's all full of Tamil people, like South Indians, the kind that you would get here, but a lot of them speak French. And when you're in the town itself, it's designed like a French city.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the names of the streets are actually in French and in Tamil.
Okay. And is that reflected in the food as well then?
I have to say not so much. The food is a bit more Indian.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because the only time that I had been to India before that was for my glam shoot.
Yeah.
Some of the pictures that you saw, that was for New Delhi. Okay. So that was in the north.
Yeah.
I mean, we got beautiful pictures out of that shoot, but the whole Indian experience was horrendous for me. I really hated it.
Yeah.
We ran into a lot of trouble. We had a lot of bad luck. At one point, we were almost thrown into jail for shooting in a park because some policemen came and wanted to drag us away. Yeah. You know, so it was super stressful, that trip. I came back from that trip and I was sick for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So that completely turned me off India, despite like seeing like amazing palaces and all that, right?
Yeah.
And so many years later, when we went to Pondicherry, and that was in the south, completely different experience. When I was in Delhi, people tell you like, okay, don't eat the local food. Even when you brush your teeth, you use mineral water. So we were doing all this kind of thing, and
Yeah.
yet I felt sick, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then when we went to Pondicherry, I ate everything. I ate raw stuff. I drank water from the tap. It's like we didn't fall sick at all. So a completely different experience.
Yeah.
People were much friendlier. They were less aggressive. And then interestingly, when I got talking to our hotel manager, who was a woman,
Yeah.
a local woman, she was telling me her experience of the north is the same as mine. Like she doesn't like the north. The people are very aggressive. All this kind of stuff that I didn't like about it. So it's interesting to see, because obviously it's a huge country, right?
Yeah.
So it's very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. We've had a good session. I think we've reaching an hour already. Let's just chat a bit more, and if there's any questions anyone would ask, we'll take any questions. But I guess I'll start with one question. Wei Chun, so assuming, right, if Singapore went into DOSCON red, right, total like complete lockdown, and you had one chance to go out to any
This is
shop,
like a magazine question.
any shop in whatever in Singapore, and buy 5 things, and then come back and boom, you're locked down for like 2 months. You cannot go out. What would you get? 5 things.
It has to be food, right?
I don't know. It's up to you, right?
It has to be food. It has to be a lot of food.
Okay, so what's the 5 food items?
A lot of vegetables for sure, but I guess it had to be a lot of canned food because depending on how long the lockdown is,
Yeah.
I think it'll be mostly canned food to be honest.
So what canned food do you eat?
Well, the interesting thing is because of this lockdown, there are several supermarkets around this area.
Yeah.
But I realized that the NTUC down one side of my house, which is in the Geylang side, I rarely go there because it's a bit further. But I've been going there because of the lockdown. It actually specializes in Malay and Indian food.
Yeah.
So it has a lot of things that other NTUCs don't have. So like instant Indian food, like I don't know, like breakfast mixes and interesting stuff like that. Malay spices. They have a lot of Malay herbs
Yeah.
and vegetables that you don't ever see in different supermarkets.
Yeah.
So that's been my favorite discovery ever since this thing happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got vegetables, you got canned food. So what about 3 non-food items? Gavin just said he will go to Kinokuniya. So I'm assuming a book, right?
Yeah, but you can order stuff online from Kinokuniya.
But everyone's locked down, so there's no delivery, whatever.
Oh,
No
okay.
more essential services, So you gotta go out, buy it, come back, and that's it. So okay, one book. What book would it be?
Wow, I can't say I'm reading a lot, to be honest. I have a lot of books in the house that I've not read yet.
Yeah.
Have to be toilet paper, I guess.
Okay, toilet paper. So you got two more left. You got 2 more lives. 2 more.
Probably stuff to clean the house in. Sorry to be so.
You're so domesticated, man.
Yeah.
What
Now I
about-
have to keep the house. Okay, if you have a nice house, there's a lot of work. Okay, I know. I used to have a part-time maid to come to clean the house. I no longer have that, so I've been cleaning the house myself. So, yeah, it's work.
All right. I'll let you go. Why have you never got a pet?
No, because I was traveling so much.
Okay.
So, and then there's nobody in the house, so I think it'd be too much. I mean, already, like I used to have an actual tree in this lounge that you see behind me,
Yeah.
and even taking care of that was quite troublesome. Yeah, so I think a pet would be worse. 'Cause the tree kept on dying, and then I had to keep buying new trees.
Okay. All right. I think we've gone on for quite a while now. So, okay. Christopher asked, "What's one product that you would actually sell if you could during this COVID-19 period?" That's a one
Sell?
question. Yeah.
I'm not sure. My design services, I can't think of anything else.
Or design a face mask. Yeah, let me, yeah.
Nah, I don't do stuff like that. You could give me your badly taken profile pictures and I could retouch them to supermodel quality. That's a useful service,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
or you could give me pictures of yourself standing in your living room and I'll Photoshop you in the Bahamas or something.
All right, great. I think we've gone on for quite a while now. So, any final words from you, Wei Chun, before we sign off? Anything
Not
you'd like
really.
to add? Yeah. Okay.
No.
Well, great. Thank you so much for being my session two guest. It's been wonderful, and I think the presentation was very interesting, and I think a lot of people will actually be interested in seeing what you showed even after this live session. So best of luck with whatever you're gonna do the rest of the weeks before, you know. Um,
You
the
can
lockdown.
post my website link, I
Yes, I
guess.
will share.
On,
I'll share your
yeah.
website link.
There's more work there.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And for the rest of the audience joining at the moment, my next session, my third session will be next week, and it's with another good friend of mine from Japan. He's in Kyoto at the moment. He's a photographer. He'll be joining me with his wife, who's actually a Japanese cook who gives cooking classes. So we'll talk about Japanese food and we'll talk about photography. So thanks, guys, for joining us. Thanks again, Wei Chun. We're signing off now. Bye.
Bye.
Everybody, take care. Bye.